Hi everyone and welcome to our session, Learning from A4LE Student Design Competitions, What are good learning environments and how do we make them? This presentation is a progress point along a multi-year research project being undertaken in parallel to the yearly A4LE Student Design Competition for college students at Virginia Tech University in Blacksburg, Virginia. To thank you for choosing our session, this is going to be a relatively short presentation. Presenting today will be myself, Rachel Pampel, and my colleague, Emma Lineberry. We'd also like to recognize Dr. Elizabeth Grant, our research collaborator and longtime studio professor for the design competition. We will be focusing on the learning objectives you see here and presenting the educational design workshop format and how it is being applied to the design competitions. Then give a brief overview of what the competition jurors have found important throughout the history of the event and review the format and process of the design competition. We'll also be taking a brief look at the winners from the 2019 competition and giving an overview of our next steps. The format for our education design workshop has 3 parts. The first is the knowledge session, the portion of the workshop where practices are presented in detail. This session takes advantage of what is called the zone of proximal development, which refers to the phenomena of how much a novice can learn in a short time when knowledge sharing is facilitated by an expert at the beginning of the learning process. The second session is all about application. The knowledge shared initially is applied to a project-based activity, and then the last part of the workshop is the reflection session. In this portion, the learner reflects on the lessons learned, often through presentation and dialogue. This format can shrink and grow as needed given the situation. To apply the workshop process to the student design competition, we had to first understand the format of the competition. The timeline covers 6 weeks from the reception of the prompt to the final pinup, with a midterm pinup in between. The winners then receive sponsorships to go to the A4LE Virginia Conference. To format the workshop, we also need to know what the criteria are for success of the design. In this case, it is defined by the judging process. The judges only grade the final pinup, but are usually available to give feedback at the midterms. The criteria for judging is set in each year's prompt. For 2019, the key factors were creativity, learning enhancement potential, educational functionality and flexibility, and presentation quality. As we mentioned, the workshop format can be adjusted to fit a given situation. In the case of the student design competition, the workshop expands to fit the longer and more involved timeline. The knowledge session happens either before or directly after the students receive the prompt and includes an introduction into both best practices in education and best practices in education design, as well as a variety of resources for individual follow-up. The application session is the design competition itself. And finally, the reflection session is broken into 3 parts across the midterm and final pinups, and then a debrief session where we explore in more detail the strengths and weaknesses of each design. Specific to this design competition, the knowledge session also includes a brief section on how to create an effective presentation board. Setting some guidelines for success coming out of the workshop is key to the ownership and long-term retention of the learning given during the workshop. To further define those guidelines for success, part of our study is analyzing the themes seen in jury comments from the previous competitions. The 3 key themes we have found and shared with the students are the need for clarity of the core design idea in a project, a design that includes strategies that react to a range of scales from human to site, and a design that is informed by the community and surrounding geography. Now I'm going to pass it off to Emma, who will be walking us through the 2019 competition prompt and the winners.
Thanks, Rachel. The prompt asked the students to design a 2-story performing arts center for high school students in the local area focused around the collaborative effort required in a theater production, as well as having a range of interior spaces needed for a good learning environment. We are going to start with honorable mention and work our way up to the first place. The main theme that drove this specific project was that the building frames the views of the site and utilizes the space on the site strategically. Using this idea helped establish a building within its site and integrate the form into its surroundings, utilizing one of the main themes that has been successful repeatedly throughout the history of this competition, design informed by surrounding geography. This student then took the idea a step further and honed in on not just the relationships of the building with the site, but with the individual buildings themselves, which stood out to the jurors. The second honorable mention used the main program as its focus for concept and form. Using the main theater as a beacon in form and scale for the community, it rises out of the center of two juxtapositioning forms, manipulating the ground plane within the buildings to recess the flanking buildings into the site to further highlight the main program and idea. This utilized the repeated successful theme of a clear idea of the concept through change of material, scale, and transparency. The jurors were drawn to how the center embraced and utilized the site to create a siting of the building as a center for the surrounding areas, as the prompt asked. The second place winner utilized the repeated successful themes of design informed by community and surrounding geography, as well as the building systems driving the design. They did this through using material changes to highlight different uses and transitions between the center. By utilizing the first theme, the program and the surrounding environment drove the form. The building took on smaller spaces that were welcomed into the sloped site and forced the circulation to be separate and integrated into the site, similar to a higher education design approach, which the jurors found to be a strong move. The winner utilized the successful theme of a strong concept, in this case, angular geometries, and then integrating that idea into not only the form, but the building system that drove the program space, plan, and section, creating active spaces to exchange energy and attentions that the judges thought was a very thorough and thoughtful use throughout the project, helping this project secure first place. Looking to the future, we'd like to expand on the study by repeating the process for at least the next 2 competitions. In doing so, we will develop our own methodology and expand our database. We'd also like to create some cheat sheets materials around the education design workshop format and the student design competition. Thank you for joining us in this session. If you have any questions or would like to see further resources on the project, please feel free to contact Rachel. Thanks again.